Hello, I'm David Burress with Calerin Forge, and we're nearing the end of our Damascus series here. I've got the handle pieces all prepped and dry fit, and tonight I'm going to take all this off, and we're going to heat treat the blade and prepare it for etching. And then once we etch it, we'll put the handle on it, and that'll be the last thing we do with this. But so let's get started. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to heat the blade up in the fire to a nice bright orange heat. We're going to check it on the magnet here. See, right now it's very magnetic, but we're going to heat it up to where it's not attracted to the magnet, and then we'll quench it in our oil bath over here, and that will harden it just as hard as it can possibly be. In fact, if it had a good edge at that point, and you never got it in any sort of a bind, it would never get dull, but it would be very brittle. So we're going to harden it off, and then we're going to shine it back up because the oil's going to carburize on the blade some. And once we get it back polished up, then we'll run the colors on it, and we're going to temper the cutting edge at a straw yellow, and that should make a superior knife that'll hold a good edge. I like to do a differential temper, so the spine will be at a different hardness than the edge by doing it that way. But when you're heating your blade up, you don't want to just stick it in the fire and leave it, because you've got an awful lot of work in it by this point. So always put it in spine down, because that's the thickest part of your blade now. And I just kind of make me a little channel in there that I can just kind of move it back and forth through as it heats. So you get a nice even heat. Got to be careful about once it starts to heat up, you don't want to hit the other side of your fire pot with the tip, because you'll curl your tip over, and then you have to correct that before you harden it. But this is a good time if you've got any sort of warpage in the blade. When you get it heated up to harden it, that's a good time to go ahead and correct anything like that before you harden it off. Now when this gets hot, we'll put it in the oil edge first, but we want to harden the entire blade, and then we'll draw the hardness back out of it. Getting close. All right. So get another grip here and make sure I got all that quenched there. You want to hold it in the oil until the oil stops bubbling around it. So I think I got a little bit of a warp there, so I'm going to Have to try and correct that when we temper it, I guess. So the oil didn't stick to it very badly. The more of a polish you got on your blade before you quench it, the easier it'll be to bring it back. So grab some sandpaper, and I've just got some 400 grit sandpaper. I'm just gonna basically polish the oil back off where it carburized. You'll start to see a little bit of the pattern emerge even just from the oil being on it. Alright, so we've got it hardened off, and I've shined it back up. It still needs a little bit of polish before we etch it, but it's shiny enough that I can see my colors run. So I'm going to take a plumber's torch, and hopefully you can see these colors as they start to form. But I'm going to just feather the flame along the spine of the knife, and we're going to watch these bands of color move across the width of the blade. And when we get a straw yellow along our cutting edge, then we're going to quench just the edge bevel there. The first thing you're going to see is kind of a mottled, cloudy, gray looking area start forming. And then the straw yellow will start in front of that. Ideally, we want a peacock blue along the spine when we've got a straw yellow on the edge. And that'll mean the spine has been brought to a hotter temperature, and we let it normalize while the edge is quenched in the oil, and that'll make the blade a little more flexible. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little bit of color change starting there. Already got the straw yellow coming on. Oh yeah, we got a good straw going. We're starting into the blue along the spine, so I'm going to have to move pretty quick to quench this so I don't overheat the edge. I don't know if you can see our color progression, but it's we've got a nice straw yellow on the cutting edge, so I'm going to let it cool. I've quenched the edge. The spine of it's still got quite a bit of heat, so I'm going to let it just normalize. And doing it that way, there's kind of a hard edge where you quench it, and by letting the rest of it cool, it kind of bleeds in and softens that edge a little bit on the quench line. So if you got it a little overheated, then that'll help that not to be a problem, not to have a brittle spot in it. So we'll let this cool, and we'll polish it back up, and next time we'll put it in the etchant and see how we did. It's kind of like Christmas. Every time you do a Damascus blade, you don't really know what you've got till you pull it out of the etchant. So I hope you enjoyed it. God bless, and happy smithing.